Hey guys, I'm excited to be here with Jason Magee from World First. Oftentimes I get questions about selling internationally because I do sell in several different marketplaces in Canada and in Europe. And there's a little bit of confusion, mysticism, I guess you could call it, of, hey, what do I do? There's these taxes and I got to fill out forms and, the money is different. But, at the end of the day, it really is just comes down to taking care of customers. And if we do that, I think everything else will work out. And so just understanding the basics behind it will help you if you decide that it does make sense for you and your business to grow internationally. So first off, Jason, thank you so much for being here on Maximizing E-commerce.
Thank you so much, man. I know we've been talking for quite some time, and I hope you don't mind me saying that you're a client of ours as well. So you're putting your money where your mouth is, so to speak. But
yes, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. We actually just started this because, and we'll talk a little bit more about money and how money changes hands between countries and all that. But I was finding that Amazon, is charging me fees, and there was a break in how I save money basically by using World First. So this is perfect timing because I've now gone through the cycle of having funds sent to World First from Amazon, and then I've completed a disbursement from World First. So I've seen the whole process, and I've seen it the other way for a while. So for those who don't know about you or World First, can you tell us a little bit about your company?
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, I'm Jason Magee. I wear a number of hats here at World First. Specifically for this, I've helped build and manage our partner ecosystem of partners like yourselves and other solution providers that help online sellers, particularly those selling on marketplaces globally, to be more profitable, to reach new markets, new regions, and help them save a lot of money in the process. So World First, we are a global payments company specializing in international payments and transfers for individuals and companies who need to send and receive money around the world. Diving into e-commerce a bit, World First actually, we were the first folks to actually create this solution of providing in-country currency accounts for sellers who are based in one country. Like say you're a US seller selling on marketplaces like Amazon in the UK, for instance. So what that does is marketplaces, there's sort of two setups for them. If you are a marketplace that welcomes international sellers, you may or may not even be able to pay that seller. So sometimes marketplaces require you to have a local currency account. So in the UK, if on Amazon, they don't allow you to sell there if you're from China without a UK bank account. So we issue those accounts for you to be able to allow you to keep your revenue. And then the second one is some marketplaces allow you to sell there with your local account, but they're not optimized to save you money when it comes to time to pay you your disbursements. So we actually provide these local currency accounts for you to collect revenue in those countries, and then we bring it back home for you in a much better rate of exchange and allow you to save money, in the exchange rate, but also use those funds to pay suppliers, pay VAT and other tax and things like that. So it's like sort of a lot more than just saving money on currency.
Perfect. So before we start getting into the whole part about currency and taxes, it sounds like it's all so complex. So why even bother selling internationally in some of these foreign marketplaces?
Yeah, Kevin, that's a really, really good question. So I think, I don't know, I think it was one of the articles you talked about now, how selling on Amazon, particularly FBA, is the golden goose in terms of, the easiest way to scale a business, right?
Right.
Well, the beauty about a marketplace like Amazon is if you, I know your audience is from all over. So even if I use one example, it's like the US, that it applies everywhere. But the beauty about FBA is you can literally just duplicate a lot of the same efforts that you're doing for your business in other countries. So you can ship all your inventory to Amazon's European warehouses just like you do in the US. So essentially, you're just growing your business in these regions by operating in a very similar model. So a lot of the reasons why people want to sell outside of their home country, one, the opportunity size. So we can share this with your audience as well. But Amazon's global selling team sent a lot of our clients an email talking about the monthly unique visitors to Amazon and across the world. In North America alone, between desktop and mobile, there's 170 million unique visitors on Amazon. And then if you look at Europe, that's another 125 million unique visitors, customers buying on Amazon.
Wow.
So that right there shows you and those North American figures also include Canada, which technically isn't, it's an international marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
So you're seeing, 70 or 80% of a larger pool of buyers who are looking to buy products. So that in and of itself represents a big opportunity. You probably see that as well. I mean, like you said, you sell internationally, so.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I found is, like, just to keep it fairly simple, Canada has about 10% of the population, and I do about, on average, 10 to 15% of my US sales in Canada when I account for the difference in currency.
Yeah.
So that means I'm actually getting a little bit of a bump. And in Europe, I'm getting, around the same return on, investment, so to speak, of what I'm selling in the US. I'm selling that in Europe, which is nice because I'm not sourcing new products. I'm just telling my supplier, okay, when I buy 1,000 units of widget X, I want 900 of them to go to the US, and we'll divide it up between the US and Canada, and then send the other 100 out to the UK, and it just all kind of happens in the background.
So do you, that's a little, so you, from your supplier, you go directly to Amazon's warehouse. You don't go back to the US and then back out. Is that right?
So in Canada, I do bring everything into the US and then I send it over. I found people, is my understanding, in Canada are willing to pay more for things, even accounting for the difference in currency. Yeah. Just because if you look at a city like Vancouver or Toronto, it's more expensive than West Palm Beach, which is near where I live. So it's just, it's expensive. And then if you're not near like Vancouver or Toronto or one of the big cities, you might have to drive an hour to a small general store, as I understand it. Yeah. So they may not have a lot of stuff. So you're willing to pay a little bit extra for the convenience of not having to drive all the way out to someplace.
And it's also like Canada's unique in that regard, but you're right. I mean, that's the thing too, is when there's less of an available, that's another reason to go international, is there are less sellers in these regions compared to the US. Yeah. Which means that there's less assortment at times. I mean, it's not always the case, but buyers are willing to pay at a higher price because it's not as competitive, and prices aren't, as competitive in these regions. So you can actually sell at a higher margin, at a higher price point, a higher margin. And that's just another reason to go international.
Yeah. And one of the nice things too is Amazon really is putting a focus on selling internationally. Like, I don't have a US Amazon account manager. I now have one for Japan because I'm launching in Japan now. And then I also have a call later on today to set up one for Europe. So that's one of the nice things, is you actually get good resources from Amazon when you sell internationally.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. And there's a point you made earlier. Oh yeah. So you made the earlier point about shipping directly, whether you ship to the US and then go out. A really cool hack is, if you really trust your suppliers, or if you just have good, like an FBA inspection or an inventory inspection company in those other regions, you can have let's say you order 1,000 widgets out of China. You can bring 500 directly to your warehouses in the US. You can send the other 500 to Europe directly.
Right.
That's a really cool hack. That way you're not coming into the US and then sending it back out. So that's just running a really good business. It's very similar to what you're doing in the US. You're just shipping it to another warehouse.
Yeah, exactly. And I use a company called FBA Prep UK, and I'll link to them. They are basically, they receive my product, and then I've just created instructions of, what I have people do in the US to prep my product. And I have them do the same thing. They, do quality control. So that way I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
If there's a problem, they just let me know. And thankfully, knock on wood, I haven't really had problems.
No, and that's it. I mean, that's just good business, right? From like, you have to know your supplier as well. You develop a really good relationship and a trust there. And then once you have those basic systems in place, it's just about scaling with those systems. So I guess some other things too. I mean, why people go international. I mean, number one, we talked about just extending the reach of your customer base, right? There's a massive opportunity there. The other thing too is, I don't know what you sell or in particular, or if there's something you want to get into, but let's say you're selling beach towels, really simple
Right.
here in the US. Well, Amazon Australia just opened, they have FBA. Well, they're complete opposite from our seasons. So it's summer here, it's winter
Mm,
there. So when it's winter here and you're not selling beach towels here, you can actually sell it and continue that the seasonality, so to speak. You
right.
can have a year-round sort of sales funnel in those regions. So that's another good reason, depending on what you're selling, to sell in other regions.
Yeah, and that's a great point. It's a new customer base. There's new reasons why they might be buying it. So yeah, that's all makes perfect sense. So we touched a little bit on, okay, there's, the ability to send in your products to these other marketplaces. So let's say I send in my product to the UK. Is there some police force waiting for me at the border that's trying to keep my goods out? And if they are looking for something, what is it they want?
That's a good one. So yeah, I mean, you need to clear customs. So you need to
Okay.
have you need to be. I mean, you're the importer of record.
Right.
It depends how much you're sending and whether you're sending like a pallet or you're just couriering a few things. It also depends too about whether you're shipping directly to a customer or if you're going to FBA.
Hmm.
I mean, my recommendation.
Let's say we're going to FBA.
Yeah, that's the thing. My recommendation is there are a lot of good companies out there, like Shapiro is one of them, which
Okay.
help you clear customs. They have a network that allows them to be the importer of record and making sure you're licensed and bonded properly. There are folks who are experts in doing that. So yeah, I don't know all the specifics in terms of every box to check because it is quite of a moving target. That's why it's good just to be able to partner with a company like that to be able to help you clear customs really easily.
Yeah, and one of the nice things is, once you're VAT registered, which people get so worried about VAT,
Yeah,
I mean, it sounds more intimidating, but once you kind of learn the philosophy behind it, it all kind of starts to make sense.
yeah,
At
yeah.
the end of the day, they just want to bring their goods into the country. And, we talk about, potentially adding tariffs in the US, but essentially it's almost like a tariff,
Yeah.
but you
What's
can
a
kind of get your
sales
money back
tax?
on it too.
Yeah, I think it's like think of it this way. I mean, first off, another one too is like I do want to. There's another company that I do recommend, and I don't want to completely shout out all the time, but
Sure.
companies like First Choice Shipping, they specifically help you ship your goods from, let's say, the U.S. to FBA warehouses, and they have discounted rates with FedEx, UPS, and other players, and they have
Oh, nice.
directly with Amazon actually save you money as well.
Hmm.
So I think it's worth noting that. But in terms of the VAT thing. I think it's the difference between a tax and a tariff, which I guess are similar. But like the VAT in this case, it's applied to everybody. It's not
Right.
trying to kick out folks who aren't from Europe. It's look, if you're going to sell in Europe, you need to apply VAT on top of your sales goods. So it's equal playing field for every single seller there.
Hmm.
Before Amazon cracked down and they didn't really check whether you had a VAT number or not, you had folks who would, especially foreigners, would sell, even local sellers as well, who would
Right.
sell, not add 20% onto their pricing or not pay the government. And they were actually just selling at a 20% discount compared to others. Now, Amazon and these marketplaces are getting rid of those players. So everybody who's there has the same playing field of applying VAT, which is roughly, I believe, 20% on their sales. And that cost has really shifted to the buyers. Everybody expects to pay that as well. So you're not at a disadvantage because you're charging VAT. Everybody's having to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things about VAT that is nice is, like, let's say you pay the VAT at the border. Now, granted, I'm no tax professional here, but my experience is basically that's essentially an input credit, as they would refer to it as. So basically, if you collect VAT from the customer, you subtract out the VAT you paid, and then that's what you owe
Yeah.
back to
So
the
there
government.
are a few things that kind of determine your VAT status and what you owe or don't owe.
Hmm.
Whether it's where a lot of it's where you have Nexus, which is where you actually have goods being stored. So if
Yes.
you actually are using, let's say Amazon FBA, you have Nexus wherever your goods are. So you have VAT obligations for that. There are different bands and thresholds based on, whether you're just doing merchant fulfilled and you're not housing inventory there. There are also
Uh-huh.
thresholds too in terms of how much you sell. So that's the other thing too is, again, not to call it another company, but there are numerous companies that are specialists in this. Like Simply VAT is an example of one. Avast VAT is
Hmm.
another. these companies help make sure you check every box. You're paying the appropriate amount. That way you don't have to worry about it. So you can absolutely do it yourself. You can go, like in the UK, you can go to the HMRC, which is Her Majesty's Royal Collections, I believe. It's their IRS.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you can go and register directly with them, or you can just put these systems in place that we always talk about and have another company help manage that for you. So you can actually focus on your business instead of the tax and obligations. So
yeah, exactly. And there's all kinds of resources out there. Amazon even has a free resource, just if someone's like kind of curious, like how would it work? It's and I'll link to it. They call it an interview. It's basically, I think it was KPMG, which is one of the big accounting firms, had where you just check the boxes of your situation and where you're sending inventory.
Yeah, they're like wizard. They're like walkthrough wizard to help you set it up.
Exactly. It just tells you where you would need to register.
Yeah.
So then you could go back and just, what I did was I just started playing with different variables to see where I would have to register or not.
Yeah.
And right now, I made it so I only have to register in the UK.
Yeah, and then it's Amazon has their long-standing solutions provider directory. They also have we've all seen they've rolled out their app store, so to speak, as well. So that's a really easy place to go and look at the resources that Amazon's putting their stamp of approval on as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if not, I mean, I'm happy to answer questions. I know you are too. We're happy to get folks the help that they need as well.
Yeah, I mean, the moral of the story here is there's so many resources out there and people that want to help you, that to basically say, well, it's too much of a hassle, I say you're just leaving money on the table.
Fine, let people do that, because folks like you have to go do it. You guys are the ones who are winning.
Exactly. So everyone that is willing to, take action, as they say, are the ones that are going to do well at it. And going back to what I was saying earlier about, some police force, no one's coming after you like, is going to, take you to jail if you check out the wrong box. I mean, 90% of things can be figured out.
Yeah. And there may be, look, I think there may be obviously like, some fees or penalties associated with it, but those aren't crippling. I mean, if you're acting with good intention and you make simple errors, you're right. I mean, 90% of the time or plus, you're trying to do the right thing as it is. Now, if you're trying to skirt the system, I mean, shame on you, but
right.
But you try and do the right thing. I mean, that's the beauty of these resources,
Yeah, and I've found anytime I've called HMRC or CRA, which is the Canadian Revenue Agency, the same thing in Canada, they're so nice and helpful. It's not like they're trying to like find a way to, get one up on me. They're just oh, okay, well here, let's help you with that, and walk me through.
Whenever you start off a conversation with, hey, I think I owe you money, or I know I do. I'm just
right.
How much? All of a sudden, everybody's like, okay, all right, well.
Yes, we'll definitely help you. It's when you're trying to get around
the Canadians. They're a nice bunch.
Exactly. They definitely are. So basically, depending on the country in, you have to register GST, VAT, whatever the case is. And, there's plenty of resources out there to help you with that. Or if you want to do it yourself, there's lots of great, resources between, calling up the agency that is in charge of it or whatever the case is. Amazon has resources. So depending on your level of DIY, or you just want to say, you know what, someone else can handle it for me, there's solutions for you. So we've kind of tackled that part is taken care of. So what about the exchange rate? So if I just go to like Google and I type in US dollar to British pounds, is that what I would expect? So
let's just define an exchange rate. The exchange rate is the value of one currency compared to another.
Yes.
So if I go and I look at the US dollars compared to pounds is 1.31.
Okay.
That means that for every pound, it's worth about $1.31 in that case. So that's just a rough benchmark. So if you're like, okay, well, that thing costs £5. Okay, well, 5 times 1.31, that's how many dollars roughly it costs.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, if you go to Google or you go to and you get like an indicative exchange rate, that's the rate that's really set by a handful of money center banks and say, okay, well, here's where that is, what the value is at this very moment. That changes every second of every day. When you go to exchange money, you're not getting that rate. I'm sure you've heard the saying, don't exchange money at an airport.
Okay.
The reason is because the company, the company or the entity that's helping you exchange that currency, that's where they make their money. Is they're buying from those major banks, and then they're just making a small profit, or
Hmm.
hopefully should be small, but then they're actually marking that up. So they say, okay, well, for you it might be $1.35 as opposed to $1.31.
Hmm.
That 4 cents is their margin. Now, when it comes to exchanging currency, I mean, there's even outside of Amazon, when you can go to banks, you can go to companies like us. We're called money service business, which
Okay.
are regulated very similar to how a bank is, licensed, bonded, etc. So your money's protected. But yeah, with us, since we only focus on international payments and really nothing else,
Hmm.
we're able to drive down our costs, and our cost basis to make these payments are a lot less than a lot of banks and other companies. We're able to and we move so much money collectively for all our clients.
Hmm.
We're able to get a ridiculous offer us a ridiculously good rate to our customers like you, and
Hmm.
save you a lot of money because we don't need nearly as much to keep our lights on. And then
Okay.
we couple, and then so hopefully that I know that's a bit of a rant, but that's what the exchange rate is, and literally it changes every second of every day. So there's two things to consider: what the value is of my dollar or my currency compared to another, and then how much does it cost me to shift between the two.
Okay. Now, earlier in the conversation, you had mentioned that if you were in a country like, let's say, the US, where Amazon allowed you to have your US based bank account where they will send the money. So let's say
Yeah,
I'm in Canada and, even though it says dollars, it's Canadian dollars, so it's
yeah.
different. And they move the money over. Um, what is it exactly that,
What happens?
they're charging? Yeah. What happens?
Yeah, so if you're, let's say US example, if I'm US, I'm selling on a marketplace in Canada, and that marketplace goes, hey, I'm going to send your funds back to the US for you, no problem.
Hmm.
These marketplaces typically rely on their banks. Amazon is an example of that, where they actually will do the conversion for you with their Amazon currency converter services, and deliver funds to your US account. Thing about that is if you were to benchmark, we benchmark this for thousands and thousands of clients.
Hmm.
It's easily anywhere between 3 to over 4%. So that means if for every $100 you sell, you're only going to get back 96 or $97 back.
Hmm.
So companies like us, we charge typically 2% or less, and just regardless of your size, we don't turn anybody away, no matter how small or big. And then, yeah, there are a lot of other ways to save money too. So with us, just as an example, you can set this up for free, and you're going to immediately see savings compared to using the marketplace directly. But at the same time too, what are you doing when you save that money? You're reinvesting it back in your business. So it just allows you to help grow and scale.
Hmm.
And there are other things too, but that's the simplest form of what we do.
Okay, cool. So, and kind of unpacking that a little bit. So, basically, if I'm sending money from point A to point B, and let's say it's from in euros from Germany into the U.S., and
Yeah.
Amazon charges me, let's say you said 3 to 4%. So let's just say 3.5%.
Yeah.
Um, Now, World First is if I use World First instead of being charged, let's say 3 to 3.5%, I'm going to be charged how much?
At least no more than 2%. So you're at
So,
least going to save between that in that example, you're going to save you 1.5% if you're getting charged 3.5%.
okay. So if I was being charged 3.5% and I'm saving 1.5%, so if I think about that, that's that adds, it may sound small, but it adds up over time.
Oh my
So
goodness. Yeah. I mean, look, all you really need to be doing is selling a few $1,000s a month for that to actually start becoming meaningful. I
right,
mean,
exactly.
maybe meaningful is, different for a lot of folks, but look, if you're scaling a business and you're running, hundreds of grand a month, that's an employee's salary you're saving right there. Um, yeah.
Right.
And that's just one example of those savings. And there are other things you could be doing as well, which we can get into, like locking in an exchange rate in advance, or things like that. But literally, like if I told you, hey, look, here's a company, it's free, or here's a tool you can use. It's free to set up,
Hmm.
and I'm going to put another 2% back in your pocket every month. I mean, it sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? I mean, that's literally what we do every day.
Yeah, and one of the nice things is with what you guys do is because where we also get charged is when we have to put money going the other direction. So, for
Yeah.
example, if when I do have to file just once a year in Canada and quarterly in the UK, um, I'm taking now money that I had. Let's say I received it, and Amazon charged me 3.5% to receive it. Um, Now I'm sending it from US dollars back into pounds to
Yeah.
pay.
Oh
Um,
man.
yeah. So
Yeah.
now my credit card or whatever is going to be charged.
Yeah.
And credit cards aren't quite as bad from what I've noticed as Amazon, but they're still, I'm losing something in the exchange there. So now I'm
Yeah.
losing it twice.
Well, you're right. And there's a few things to look at this. I mean, if you just want following that, unpacking that from I guess the flow of funds. Yeah, you're losing exchange and coming back to the U.S. So obviously there are other ways to save compared to Amazon, like us, or
Mm-hmm.
funds going back out. Obviously you can use your bank, but there's also companies that, like us who can do that for you too. But to take that a step further, you don't need to have funds. You can keep funds in the UK and not have to
Mm-hmm.
convert back to the dollars and then back out the pounds. So,
Exactly.
yeah. So if you're selling, let's say $10,000 and you owe $1,000 or 10,000 pounds and you owe 1,000 pounds for VAT, why don't you just bring back only 9 grand and then
Mm-hmm.
that 1 grand, keep it in pounds and just pay for VAT? Thing is, Amazon, you can't do that. With Amazon, you have to bring back your full amount and they're only going to pay you back in your home country in that case,
Mm-hmm.
unless you have a local account like that we provide. So
Well, and if you have a local account and you're not using company like World First, you'd have to set up a local company because you can't just say, "Hey, I'm a Florida-based
oh yeah.
company. Let me open up a bank account in London." It doesn't work that way. You'd have to have
No,
a
it doesn't. I mean,
company.
yeah, there are a lot of hoops you have to jump through, like registering a company there, or actually flying there to actually set up an account. I mean, we've heard these horror stories where it takes months and thousands of dollars. And I'm not going to get into the tax thing too, but there's
Mhm.
obviously, there are tax changes that come along with that as well.
Yeah, exactly. So when you're a local company, you have different tax requirements. Now, I'm no tax expert, but as I
Yeah,
understand, there's more tax requirements for being a
yeah,
local company.
yeah.
And like you were saying before about making sure you're running your business in a smart way. The more you can pay in the local currency, like for example, just one little thing kind of separate from this, but along the same lines is in the US, I pay all of my pay per click on my Capital One card because I get 2% back. I don't pay per click outside of the US on my Capital One card. I just have it subtract from my disbursement. So that way it stays in the local currency. And the nice thing is I found with World First, if I'm keeping for other things that I can't just have Amazon pay directly, now all of a sudden I have something where I can keep it in that local currency and I can send it off to whoever I need to pay
Yeah.
whatever bill in that local currency. So that's one of the nice things. So I'm not paying exchange fees back and forth twice now.
Oh yeah, man. And this is I look at it. I always say like there's like a 101, which is look, you know, here's a base thing you need to understand. There's always just 2, 3, or 400 level things. But like, let's go back to that example. U.S. going outbound. Let's say you're paying a supplier in Europe.
Okay.
The supplier may give you two prices. They may say, oh, you're in the U.S. Here's a U.S. dollar price.
Mm,
One hack is ask that supplier to give you a local currency price. So, okay,
okay.
well, look, you're in Europe. Just give me a euro price. And you can actually just put that into Google real quick. And you can obviously, a lot of times you can see that they actually inflate the US dollar price. One, it's a convenience thing, right? They're like, all right, well, I'm going to take off the complexity of you having to pay me euros. Just pay me dollars. That's fine. But if
Right.
you know what? I have a good setup with a provider. I can pay you euros, no problem. You can actually get a discount and negotiate a discount with your supplier. So if you start adding up the 2% cash back
Mhm.
you pay with your card on PPC, savings on your currency coming in, paying local currency, these are really cool ways to help you beat out competition.
Exactly. It's those little things here and there that play in the margins, and those little things actually are a big portion of your profit over time.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Um, so one of the things I do have a question on, and I I got my first disbursement from World First. And as I understand, there's different ways for money to change hands when it's going between currencies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I use, my bank had charged me a $15 wire transfer receiving fee, which I thought,
Incoming wire fee. That's right.
yeah,
Yeah.
I had to pay to receive money, because I didn't have to do that with Amazon. Why would that be?
Yeah, well, that's it. So some banks, you typically see it a lot with more regional or smaller banks. You'll see it. You use B of A, and it's a large bank, obviously. But yeah, I mean, that's just another moneymaker for them in a lot of ways. I mean, it does cover costs too, for them. But yeah, I mean, so when they charge you a wire fee, I know with us, there are numerous ways we can disperse money and send money to you. So if we realize that you're actually getting charged an incoming wire fee, we can actually alter how we send that payment to you to tell that bank we want to incur that fee. I mean, obviously it's up to the banks to decide whether that's okay or not. I mean, more than 90% of the time, we're able to eat that fee and we're able to take that burden away from you. And a lot of banks don't have that privilege or a lot of folks in your scenario don't have that privilege to be able to get rid of some of those fees.
Yeah. So does that mean that we have a less favorable exchange rate?
No, it just eats into our own profits, but hey, it's a cost of doing business to make sure that you guys are taken care of.
Wow. So that's awesome. So, so if someone is thinking about selling internationally and they say, you know what, I'm concerned, you know, there's other things out there. What have you seen or some of the pitfalls people have had that, like, if they may have said to you, like, okay, if I had only known X, things would have been better for me when
I think I'll take this a different way. I think the main pitfall is just never trying. I think, look, if you look at it, all starts with what you sell. I think if you look at the way, like what you do as a business, I mean, if your goal is to, most of us are, I mean, almost all of us are in business to make money for the most part. And,
right.
And sell as many widgets as we can, and, just grow a profitable business. So I think if you look at the steps, number one is, what do I sell? Am I allowed to sell it in another country? Is it my own brand, which I own the brand, I don't have to worry about branding rights or whatever. Or if you need approval, can you get the approval and sell it somewhere else? Mm-hmm. Test the market. Go on to that local Amazon site yourself, for instance, and start typing in and searching for your products or your category. Mm-hmm. See what other companies are selling. See if there's an opportunity for you. The beauty about FBA is you can test with a few products. My recommendation is, if you're in the U.S., which I know a lot of your listeners are, but they're not all, Canada and UK are very good places to start with. Start FBA with a very small amount. Don't worry about profitability. Worry about sales velocity, and are you actually able to move product there? Mm-hmm. Profitability will come at scale, right? You can find a better, faster way to logistically send products. You can find, branding that or like inserts that resonate with other clients. All that will come. But if you start there, the beauty about starting those markets is they're English speaking. Yes, they're different though. They use S's instead of Z's. They call tennis shoes trainers. You need to make sure that you get that right. Mm-hmm. It's a very easy foray into where you're going to start. So if you look at it, is my product going to sell? Let's start with FBA. Let's send products there. Making sure you check a few of those check boxes. Mm-hmm. That's where you start. So I think the biggest pitfalls really come from not trying when you say you want to. That's the biggest one. The other one too is just like ignoring things that are there, right? Taxes, for instance, and VAT and GST, HST. It's just making sure you have those initial things taken care of. Those are the major ones, at least for those folks getting started.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's all about just getting started, and you'll figure things out. I remember my first shipment to Canada, I was using UPS, and there was like a commercial invoice that I needed to have, and I didn't include it. Well, guess what? They called me and said, hey, you need to fill out this form. It wasn't like the police came out to my house and tried to arrest me. It was just, hey, fill out this form. Did it delay it a couple days? Yes. Did I learn to make sure that form is filled out? Yes. And everything's been fine ever since.
The thing about the very first, let's take it another step back. How about your first time you ever sent inventory to FBA in general? I mean, same thing, right? You had to fill something out. So it's like, if you've already taken, you've taken the steps to try something new in general, this is just applying a lot of what you learned into a new setup, a very similar setup, just in a different way.
Awesome. Well, that is great advice. So just to wrap up this conversation, if somebody's looking into, World First and they wanted more information, where would they go?
So a couple places. I mean, you can email me directly. Actually, I'm going to give you somebody else's email because this gentleman is the go-to. His name is TJ Hyland. So if you go to tj.hyland, HYLAND, at worldfirst.com.
Okay.
You can also email me, Jason Magee, jason.magee, MAGEE, at worldfirst.com.
Okay.
We'll give your listeners a link to just go onto our site. It's a free account to set up anyways.
Okay.
We'll also give anybody a free FX analysis. If somebody just wants to know what they're being charged, if they're selling internationally or paying invoices globally, we'll do that for free. Just email us or give us a call, and we'll take care of you guys.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah,
awesome. Well, thank you so much. You've been very giving with the information and hopefully inspired some folks to, if they were thinking about it and they're kind of on the fence about selling internationally, that now's the time to pull the trigger and go ahead and do it. So thank you so much, Jason.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Take care.